The woman was half frozen when she stepped into Caleb Turner's barn, and the first thing he noticed was not her face, Dot. It was the blood. A thin line of it ran down her wrist, dripping onto the packed dirt floor while snow melted around her boots. The storm outside had swallowed the prairie whole, and for a second Caleb thought she might be a ghost wandering in from the dark. She stood there trembling, one hand clutching the barn door, the other wrapped around a small leather satchel, as if it contained her soul. "Please," she whispered. Just one night. Caleb Turner had spent 8 years teaching himself not to trust desperate people. Desperate people lied. They stole. They brought trouble to your doorstep and left you paying for it. But something about her eyes stopped him. Not beauty. He barely noticed that then. It was the look of someone who had been running for so long she had forgotten what safety felt like. "Who's after you?" He asked. Her throat moved before she answered. "I don't know if they're still behind me." That was not an answer. Caleb should have sent her away. Any sensible rancher would have. Winter storms had a way of trapping strangers together, and strangers carried stories that could ruin a man. Instead, he took off his coat and handed it to her. "Stay here one night," he said. "When the weather breaks, you move on." Relief hit her so hard she nearly collapsed. That should have been the end of it. But by the time spring came, the whole county would stand in a church watching her become his wife, and Caleb Turner would wonder how a single night had changed everything he thought. He knew about love. The storm raged until dawn. Caleb gave her the small room beside the kitchen and slept in a chair by the fire with his rifle across his knees. He told himself it was caution, not curiosity. Still, sometime after midnight, he heard her crying through the wall, not loud, not dramatic. The kind of crying a person does when they believe nobody is listening. It bothered him more than it should have. At sunrise, he found her awake, sitting at the table with both hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. The satchel rested on her lap. "Name?" he asked. "Eleanor? Last name?" She hesitated. "Eleanor is enough for now." Caleb leaned against the counter, studying her properly for the first time. She was younger than he had thought, maybe 24 or 25. Dark hair escaped from a loose braid, and there was a stubborn set to her jaw that did not match the fear in her eyes. "You always answer questions with half the truth?" "Only when the whole truth gets people hurt." That answer should have sent him straight to the door. Instead, he found himself asking, "How bad is that cut?" She glanced at her wrist. Not bad enough to complain about. He fetched bandages anyway. When he took her hand, she flinched. Caleb stopped immediately. "I'm not going to hurt you." For a moment, she looked at him as if she wanted desperately to believe that. Then she slowly relaxed. The cut was shallow, but raw from the cold. His hands were rough from years of ranch work, and he tried to be gentler than he knew how to be. "You travel alone?" he asked. "I do now." Again, half an answer. Outside, the wind screamed across the prairie. No one would be leaving today. Eleanor noticed him looking toward the window. "I can work for my stay," she said quickly. "Cook, clean, mend clothes. Whatever you need. I didn't ask for payment. People always do." The words came out so quietly that Caleb almost missed them. Something tightened in his chest. He had known hard lives before. The West was full of them. But there was a difference between hardship and whatever had taught this woman to expect kindness to come with a price. "You can help with supper," he said. "That's enough." She nodded, though she looked unconvinced. The day passed strangely. Eleanor moved through the house like someone afraid of taking up space. Yet whenever she thought Caleb was not looking, she watched everything with sharp attention, the doors, the windows, the distance between the house and the barn. A person planning an escape, he thought, or a person expecting one. That evening she made stew from his pantry supplies, and somehow turned ordinary ingredients into the best meal he had tasted in months. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" he asked. A faint smile touched her lips for the first time, from someone who believed good food could keep a family together. Did it? The smile disappeared. Not always. After supper, Caleb stepped onto the porch to check the weather. The storm had weakened, but the sky was turning the color that usually meant another round was coming. When he turned back toward the house, he noticed Eleanor standing at the window, staring toward the road. Her face had gone completely white. Caleb followed her gaze, far out on the prairie. Barely visible through the blowing snow, a rider was approaching the ranch, and Eleanor looked like she had just seen death coming for her. The word barely escaped her lips. She had spent weeks convincing herself the past was buried beneath the snow. Now it was riding straight. You don't have to do this. Wyatt looked at her. No, they're not after you. They will be the moment they ride onto my land. Her voice cracked. I can't let innocent people suffer because of Clara's. Hands began to tremble. No. Toward her. Wyatt closed the front door and slid the heavy bolt into place. How many? He asked the messenger. 5, maybe 6. Hard to tell through the storm. The ranch hands gathered in silence. No one panicked. Simply exchanged the kind of looks shared by people who had survived hard winters and harder battles. Wyatt turned to the messenger. You've done enough. Get your horse warm before it drops. The man nodded and hurried toward the stable. Clara stepped closer. Me. Wyatt's eyes never left hers. You didn't bring evil here. Clara. They did. Those simple words settled somewhere deep inside her. No one had defended her in months. Not since her father had died. Not since the sheriff accepted a sack of money instead of the truth. She had forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside her. Wyatt called the ranch hands together. We don't start fights. Everyone nodded. But if armed men forced their way onto this ranch, we finish them. Again. No one argued. Old Gus smiled through his gray beard. I was hoping you'd say that. A few men laughed. The tension eased for only a moment. Then everyone went back to work. Rifles were cleaned, lanterns filled. The horses moved nervously. Sensing the unease that had settled over the ranch. Clara stood in the kitchen, staring at her reflection in the window. She hated herself for bringing danger to the only place that had felt like home. She heard Wyatt enter behind her. You should get some rest. She shook her head. I haven't told you everything. I figured my father didn't owe those men as much as they claimed. Wyatt waited. She took a shaky breath. He discovered they were stealing land deeds, forging signatures, threatening widows who couldn't read the contracts. Wyatt's expression hardened. My father gathered proof. Where is it now? She hesitated. I have it. His eyes narrowed. You've been carrying it this whole time? She reached beneath her coat and pulled out a small leather pouch worn smooth by weeks of travel. I've never let it out of my sight. Inside were folded papers. Receipts. Land records. Signed statements. Enough to ruin powerful men if the law was willing to listen. Wyatt studied the documents carefully. This explains everything. They killed for these papers, and they'll kill again. Silence settled between them. Finally, Wyatt folded the papers and handed them back. We'll keep them safe. We? He smiled faintly. You're not alone anymore. The words warmed her far more than the fire ever could. That Evening, the wind finally began to die. The sky cleared enough for the setting sun to paint the snow in shades of gold and crimson. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like the calm before something terrible. Clara found Wyatt repairing a fence near the barn. You don't stop working, do you? He chuckled. The cattle don't care about trouble. She stood beside him. I've been thinking. That's usually dangerous. She laughed despite herself. You should laugh more. She looked at him. I forgot how. You'll remember. Their eyes met. For the first time, neither of them looked away. There was no rush. No dramatic confession. Only a quiet understanding growing between two lonely souls who had stopped expecting happiness. Wyatt cleared his throat. When spring comes, she tilted her head. You should stay, she blinked, as a ranch hand. If that's what you want. And if it isn't? He smiled awkwardly. I'll think of something else. Her cheeks warmed. Neither of them noticed Gus watching from the stable. The old cowboy grinned to himself. Took you long enough, he muttered. That night Clara couldn't sleep. She replayed every conversation. Every smile, every quiet moment. She knew she was falling in love. It terrified her. Love had cost her everything once before. She couldn't survive losing another home. Just before dawn, the barking of ranch dogs shattered the silence. A gunshot echoed across the valley. Then another. Wyatt was out of bed before the second shot. He grabbed his rifle. Stay inside, he ordered. Clara followed him anyway. The ranch yard exploded with movement. Horses screamed. Men shouted. Flames rose from the hay barn. They're here, someone yelled. Masked riders burst through the front gate. Bullets tore through the freezing air. Wyatt fired once. Rider tumbled from his saddle. Another man charged toward the house. Before Wyatt could reload, Clara grabbed a shovel, leaning against the porch. Ryder reached her. Every ounce of strength she slammed into his shoulder. He crashed into the snow. Wyatt stared at her in disbelief. You were supposed to stay inside. I stopped following orders a long time ago. Despite he almost smiled. The fight lasted only minutes. Attackers realized the ranch was prepared. One by one, they retreated into the trees. Only one wounded rider remained behind. Wyatt dragged the man into the barn. After removing the mask, Clara gasped. I know him. The wounded man looked away in shame. His name was Ethan Cole. Years earlier, he had worked for Clara's father. What happened to you? She whispered. He struggled to speak. I had debts. They owned me. Who sent you? His breathing became uneven. Silas Mercer. The name froze every man in the room. Silas Mercer, the wealthiest cattle baron in the territory. A man respected by judges. Protected by politicians. Feared by everyone else. Ethan grabbed Clara's sleeve. He doesn't just want the papers. She leaned closer. What does he want? Ethan swallowed painfully. You. Before anyone could ask another question, the barn door suddenly slammed shut. A heavy beam dropped into place from the outside. Someone had locked them in. Then came the unmistakable smell of smoke. A heartbeat later, flames crawled beneath the wooden doors. Someone outside had set the barn on fire, and Wyatt, Clara, and 3 ranch hands were trapped inside. Old Gus coughed into his sleeve. They're trying to burn us alive. Wyatt turned sharply. Get every horse loose. If they panic, they'll die. The smoke reached them before the flames did. It rolled through the cracks in the walls, thick and black, stealing the air from their lungs. The horses screamed and kicked against their stalls. Clara's heart pounded. They've locked us in. Wyatt threw his shoulder against the barn doors. Heavy beam outside didn't move. Again. Nothing. The ranch hands rushed to cut the ropes. Within seconds, frightened horses thundered through the barn. Searching desperately for a way out, Clara grabbed a bucket. The well. No time, Wyatt said. The roof will go first. Another loud crack echoed. Overhead, burning straw drifted from the yard. Rafters. The fire was spreading fast. Wyatt scanned the walls. Then he spotted the old feed entrance, half buried behind stacked lumber. He pointed. Move everything. Everyone pushed. Together. Boards. Barrels. Broken fencing. Every second mattered. The heat became unbearable. Sweat poured down their faces, despite the freezing winter outside. Finally, the opening appeared. Too small. Wyatt swung an axe into the wooden frame. Once. Twice. Three times. The rotten timber splintered. Apart. Cold air rushed inside. Go, he shouted. The ranch hands crawled through first. Clara helped Ethan toward the opening. The wounded man stumbled. I can't. You can. I've done terrible things. She looked him straight in the eyes. Then live long. Enough to make one good choice. With her help, he squeezed through. Only Wyatt remained. A burning beam crashed behind him. The roof groaned. Wyatt! Clara cried. He started toward the opening. Then he heard, terrified WHINYING. One horse remained trapped, his favorite Murray, the same horse that had carried him through blizzards, cattle drives, and the darkest years after his wife's death. Without thinking, he turned back. Clara grabbed his arm. No, I won't leave her. The barn is coming down. He gently pulled free. I'll be right behind you. Before she could stop him, he disappeared into the smoke. Wyatt! The answer was another deafening crack. The roof collapsed. Flames exploded into the sky. Clara stared in horror. No. The world around her disappeared. She didn't hear the men shouting. She didn't feel the snow beneath her knees. Only one thought remained. He was gone. Then a shape burst. Through the side wall, a horse charged out of the burning barn. Wyatt rode her straight through the flames. The Mare stumbled into the snow. Shaking but alive, Wyatt slid to the ground, coughing violently. Before he could catch his breath, Clara threw her arms around him. She didn't care who saw. She didn't care what anyone thought. You fool, she whispered through tears. I know. You could have died. I know. She held him tighter. I don't ever want to lose you. The words escaped before she could stop. Silence settled between them. Wyatt slowly lifted her chin. You won't. For one perfect moment, neither of them noticed the smoke or the ruined barn. He kissed her. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle. Kind of kiss too. Lonely hearts share after believing love had passed them by forever. Even the ranch hand smiled. Old Gus quietly removed his hat. About time. Everyone laughed. For the first time since Clara arrived, hope felt stronger than fear, but hope never lasted. Long on the frontier. By afternoon, Ethan's fever worsened. The ranch doctor wouldn't arrive until morning. Ethan knew he wouldn't survive the night. He asked to speak with Wyatt and Clara. Alone, they sat beside his bed. His breathing had become shallow. There isn't much time. Clara took his hand. You can still make this right. He nodded. Weakly. There are more papers. Wyatt frowned. What papers? Mercer's ledger. What ledger? With every bribe. Every stolen ranch. Every judge he paid. Wyatt leaned closer. Where is it? Ethan struggled to focus. Hidden. Beneath the old church. In Red Creek. Clara exchanged a look with Wyatt. If the ledger existed, it could destroy Silas Mercer forever. Ethan smiled sadly. Your father trusted me once. He did. I failed him. Tears filled Clara's eyes. You don't have to die as the man you became. He closed his eyes. I hope he forgives me. A few moments later, his breathing stopped. Clara quietly folded his hands across his chest. Outside, snow began falling again. The ranch buried. Ethan the next morning on a hill, overlooking the valley. No family came. Only strangers who believed every soul deserved one honest farewell. After the service, Wyatt saddled 2 horses. Clara approached. You're leaving. We're leaving. She blinked. What? If Mercer's ledger is really in Red Creek, we need it before he realizes Ethan talked. It's dangerous. So, is staying here. She looked toward the ranch house. It had become the closest thing she'd had to a home in years. I don't want to bring more trouble. Wyatt stepped closer. Listen to me. She met his eyes. This fight stopped being just yours the day I asked you to stay. Her heart ached. No one had ever chosen her. Not like this. Old Gus walked over carrying Wyatt's father's revolver. You'll need this. Wyatt accepted it. Watch the ranch. Gus smiled. Bring her back. Clara blushed. Gus pretended not to notice. By sunrise, they were riding across frozen plains toward Red Creek. The journey took 2 days. They crossed icy rivers, camped beneath endless stars, shared quiet conversations beside small fires. One evening, Clara asked softly, Why did you never remarry? Wyatt stared into the flames. I thought loving someone twice meant forgetting the first. And now? He looked at her. I finally understand that's not how the heart works. She reached for his hand. He held it without saying another word. Somewhere in the darkness, hidden among distant rocks, another rider watched them. He turned his horse and disappeared into the night. By the time Wyatt and Clara reached Red Creek, Silas Mercer already knew exactly where they were headed. And this time, he wasn't sending hired guns. He was coming himself. Red Creek looked peaceful from a distance. Smoke curled from chimneys. Children chased one another through the muddy street. The church bell rang softly over the town. It was hard to believe that somewhere beneath those quiet buildings lay the secret that could bring down the most powerful cattle baron in the territory. Wyatt and Clara left their horses at the livery stable and walked the rest of the way. Act like we're passing through, Wyatt said quietly. Clara nodded. But keep your eyes open. The old church stood at the edge of town, its white paint faded by years of wind and dust. The minister, a gray-haired man named Reverend Thomas, greeted them with a warm smile. Can I help you? Wyatt removed his hat. We're looking for a man who used to work here. Ethan Cole. The Reverend's gentle expression changed. I remember Ethan. He told us there was something hidden beneath this church. The old man studied them for a long moment. Then he quietly locked the front doors. I've been praying someone honest would come. He led them through the empty sanctuary to a narrow staircase behind the pulpit. The steps creaked beneath their boots. At the bottom was a tiny storage cellar. Dust covered everything. Old hymn books, broken chairs, wooden crates. The Reverend pointed toward a loose stone in the far corner. It has waited there for years. Wyatt knelt and pulled the stone aside. Beneath it rested a small iron box. Its lock had rusted with age. One strike from Wyatt's revolver broke it open. Inside lay a thick leather ledger, several sealed letters, and a silver pocket watch. Clara picked up the watch. Her hands began to shake. It was my father's. She opened the cover. Inside was a tiny engraving. For my beloved daughter. Never stop believing in what is right. Tears blurred her vision. He knew he might not come home. Wyatt gently rested a hand on her shoulder. He wanted you to finish what he started. She pressed the watch against her heart. I hope I've made him proud. You already have. Wyatt opened the ledger. Every page revealed another crime. Forged deeds, bribes paid to judges, threats against ranchers, names of hired gunmen, even payments to the sheriff who had ignored. Clara's pleas. It was everything they needed. The Reverend smiled with relief. Justice has been waiting a long time. Before anyone could speak again, the church window shattered. Glass exploded across the floor. A rifle shot struck the wooden cross behind the altar. Get down! Wyatt shouted. Another bullet tore through the doorway. Outside, horses thundered across the street. Men surrounded the church. Wyatt carefully peeked through a broken window. At least 15 riders, all heavily armed. Standing in front of them was a tall man dressed in an expensive black coat, silver hair, cold blue eyes, a calm smile that never reached his face. Silas Mercer. He dismounted slowly, as though he had all the time in the world. I've heard so much about you, Miss Bennett. He called. His voice was smooth. Almost friendly. What a shame we had to meet like this. Clara stepped beside Wyatt, despite his attempt to shield her. You murdered my father. Silas sighed. Your father destroyed himself. He refused to sell innocent people. He refused to understand progress. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Funny word for theft. Silas chuckled. You must be Hayes. I am. I offered to buy your ranch once. I remember. You should have accepted. I don't sell what's built with honest hands. Silas's smile disappeared. Pity. He raised one hand. His men aimed their rifles. You have 1 minute. To do what? Wyatt asked. Hand over the ledger and the girl. Clara stepped forward. No. Silas looked almost amused. You think this story ends with justice? He shook his head. It ends the way power always wins. The town had gone silent. People watched from behind shuttered windows. No one dared interfere. Not yet. Wyatt leaned toward Clara. There may be another way out. She glanced toward the back of the church. A narrow passage led into the cemetery. If we run, they'll shoot us. The Reverend quietly spoke. There are tunnels. Both of them turned. Tunnels? Built during the war years. He pointed beneath another loose floorboard. They lead outside town. Wyatt smiled. Now that's a blessing. Silas's voice thundered from outside. Time is up. The church doors exploded inward. Gunfire filled the sanctuary. Wyatt returned fire. One attacker fell. Another ducked behind a wagon. The Reverend opened the hidden entrance. Hurry! Clara clutched the ledger beneath her coat. She and Wyatt disappeared into the narrow tunnel as bullets ricocheted off the stone walls behind them. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel twisted beneath Red Creek for what felt like miles. Only a single lantern lit their path. Finally, daylight appeared ahead. They emerged into a dry creek bed beyond town. For one brief moment, they believed they had escaped. Then they heard slow applause. Silas Mercer stood, waiting with 4 gunmen. He smiled as though he had expected them all along. "I had those tunnels built." Wyatt instinctively moved in front of Clara. Silas drew his revolver. "I admire your courage, Hayes." His eyes shifted to Clara. But every love story reaches its final chapter. He pointed the gun directly at Wyatt's heart. "Give me the ledger." "No." Silas cocked the hammer. "Then watch him die." Clara looked at Wyatt. Wyatt looked at Clara. Neither of them spoke, because both of them knew exactly what the other was about to do. And neither was willing to let the other make that sacrifice. The silence between them lasted only a heartbeat. Then Clara stepped forward. "Stop." Wyatt caught her wrist. "Don't." She looked into his eyes, tears shining but her voice steady. "If he dies because of me, I'll never forgive myself." Silas Mercer smiled. "There's the sensible woman." Clara gently pulled free from Wyatt's grasp. "I'll give you the ledger." "No," Wyatt said firmly. She turned to him. "You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me something worth protecting. I can't let you die." Wyatt took one slow step toward her. "And I won't let you surrender." Silas sighed impatiently. "You too have become exhausting." His finger tightened on the trigger. "Last chance." Clara slowly reached beneath her coat. She pulled out the leather ledger. Every eye followed it. Silas stretched out his hand. "That's better." She walked toward him, one careful step after another. Wyatt watched, helplessly. He knew she was planning something. He just didn't know what. When Clara stood only a few feet away, she smiled faintly. "You've chased this book for months." Silas nodded. "It belongs to me." "No." She looked directly into his eyes. "It belongs to every family you destroyed." Before Silas could react, Clara threw the ledger into the icy river rushing beside the creek. "No." Silas lunged after it. The current seized the book instantly, pulling it downstream. Silas fired his revolver in blind fury. A shot echoed through the valley. Clara gasped. She stumbled backward. A dark stain spread across her coat. "Clara!" Wyatt reached her just before she fell. He dropped to his knees, catching her in his arms. "No, no." "Stay with me." She tried to smile. "I guess." I finally stopped running. His hands pressed desperately against the wound. "You promised you'd stay." "I know." "You don't get to break that promise." Tears streamed down his face. "I love you." The words came without hesitation. Without fear. "I love you more than this ranch. More than my own life." Clara's trembling fingers touched his cheek. "I was hoping you'd say that." Behind them, Silas climbed from the freezing water, soaked and furious. "The book is gone." One of his men shouted. "We can still kill them." Silas raised his revolver again. Before he could fire, another gunshot rang out. Then another. Then dozens more. Silas froze. Horsemen poured over the nearby ridge. Not hired. Guns. Ranchers. Farmers. Families from every valley Mercer had stolen from. Old Gus rode at the front. Beside him came the Reverend. The messenger Wyatt had helped weeks earlier. Even the sheriff's own deputy. Word had spread across the territory. People were finished being afraid. Old Gus pointed his rifle. "Drop it, Mercer." Silas laughed bitterly. "You think you've won?" The deputy stepped forward. "We searched your office this morning." Silas's confidence faded. The copies of every land deed were still there. Another rancher held up a bundle of documents. "And your accountant decided prison wasn't worth your loyalty." The deputy continued. "We've got witnesses." The Reverend held up Ethan's signed confession and sworn statements. One by one, Silas's gunmen lowered their weapons. They had fought for money, not for a doomed man. Silas looked around. No one stood beside him anymore. He slowly let his revolver fall into the snow. His empire had collapsed without another shot, but Wyatt barely noticed. His world rested in his arms. "Get the doctor!" he shouted. Someone raced toward town. Minutes felt like hours. Clara drifted in and out of consciousness. She heard Wyatt's voice, felt him holding her hand, refusing to let go. The doctor arrived, breathless. He examined the wound quickly and looked up. The bullet passed through. Wyatt's heart stopped. It missed her heart. He blinked. She lived. Relief hit him so hard, he nearly collapsed. He laughed, then cried, then kissed Clara's forehead again and again. "You hear that?" She opened her eyes weakly. "I wasn't planning on leaving." Winter slowly loosened its grip on the valley. The snow melted into rushing streams. Fresh grass pushed through the earth. The ranch began to bloom again. The burned barn was rebuilt by neighbors who refused payment. Every nail driven into its frame was a reminder that kindness could spread farther than fear ever had. Silas Mercer was sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars. The stolen ranches were returned to their rightful owners. Clara's father's name was finally cleared. A new headstone stood beside his grave. It read, "He chose truth over fear." His daughter finished what he began. On the first warm morning of spring, Wyatt stood outside the ranch house, wearing the only clean suit he owned. Old Gus adjusted his collar. "You look nervous." "I've faced stampedes calmer than this." "You've also survived Clara Bennett." Wyatt laughed. Fair point. The ranch hands gathered beneath blooming cottonwood trees. The Reverend waited with a worn Bible in his hands. Clara stepped out of the house, wearing a simple ivory dress she had sewn herself. No jewels, no lace. That's just quiet beauty. Wyatt forgot how to breathe. She walked toward him slowly. Not as the frightened woman who had collapsed on his porch months before, but as someone who had found her strength. Found her future. Found her home. The Reverend smiled. "Who gives this bride?" Old Gus cleared his throat. "The whole ranch does." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Even Clara wiped away a tear. The ceremony was short. They had both waited long enough. When the Reverend asked Wyatt if he would love and honor Clara for the rest of his days, he didn't hesitate. Every sunrise. When Clara was asked the same question, she looked into Wyatt's eyes. "I came here asking for one night." Her voice trembled with emotion. "You gave me a lifetime." "I will." The Reverend smiled. "Then by the authority entrusted to me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Wyatt kissed her as cheers echoed across the valley. The horses stamped their hooves. The ranch hands whistled. Old Gus wiped his eyes before pretending dust had gotten into them. That evening, as the sun dipped below the endless western horizon, Wyatt and Clara sat together on the porch where everything had begun. The fields glowed with the colors of spring. New calves wandered beside their mothers. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers. Instead of smoke, Clara rested her head on Wyatt's shoulder. "Do you remember what you said the night we met?" He smiled. "I've said a lot of foolish things." She laughed softly. "You opened the door and said, 'Stay here one night.' I remember." She intertwined her fingers with his. "I almost kept walking." He kissed the top of her head. "I'm thankful the storm was stronger than your stubbornness." She smiled toward the sunset. "So am I." Some people spend their whole lives searching for home. Others find it on the coldest night of their lives, behind a weathered ranch door, in the quiet kindness of a stranger who asks for nothing except one night. Neither of them could have known that by the time spring arrived, two lonely hearts would no longer be strangers. They would be husband and wife. And every time someone asked how their story began, Wyatt would smile at Clara before giving the same simple answer. "It only took one night for her to change my life."